أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم بارين Gambia كل بدي أمنا بي دماسو April karo akili sabo on the 3rd of April 2022 bi dimanche le 3 avril 2022 alnal badi malen baytul almarus a jamaat babil masjid assalam mbedi amna follow mbari male banta ika faye Idrissa Baji Ibo Town bare ala ciosano mu ka salati bare to wuluta Ibo Town le ke balem halibaji famale ke banin kunu sunkaro atili follow ala min jodo ya talantan kala talantan nin kilin 10 o'clock at 11 10 11 kebani mole melon ko asahata akala ya so pasini atara ya rek abe siri fo afana na dimbal kacala alana dimbal kacha aterima mala dimbaleti anyon soto madia ni se duwa nyin karbu nyarim ba wena bele nyin karo kono akil folo ne molam le akil fulan jamu ibadila mari wala Allahu akbar iblis sitrin kabrenda ala soro le wala na duwa mbal be danila nsa so duwa la nsa so fidayo la fo akala sala jong sonandi alsa sof algana me alon ka hinata algana be firdausi atema men soto adingole o soto al komo fana ala wiru wande no duwa ngam laftang be nga so fidala nga so duwala keba kende ba fo akala sala jong sonandi keba mo kendo ka bok sato korra kono kabilo kono sato kono banko kan alala kitiyo lembara mandia ton se duwaye fo atala sa jose sonni mastala la fadiliyat niyo botaje yankuba jamme makumbaya mbenga lodu la lonne a lota APRC nyame alota babil man say nyamen amante kumpa baytula handan sate mola me kumpa ay men ke nyin sate kono ndol ngalon wana be duwala suta tili yankuba jame mo kenne balem ako jumana la ken imam tanludu ye wala kumani la be wala be dunna makumba ya akoy ka alqur'ano karang fo altala saka karam president jamme se duwa ani banko be kolya men kono fo altala sa bondi adum fane ako fane be duwala ntol man ka diam audio to nte baytulaye be duwala nyi kata jamme jilanko oga sani jiba kulo one man soldier prof baji Mohamed Maron kata la min tamanyon e control men ka diamu audio lan ka diamu ibe duala nyefo fo altala sen tanga ni setanola lafta men na altala sa dina ni mbulu bala ako jumalu na diata mastala iba karana ni parata ye jumo sali rek ye canjam ko mu nema bariti nemo le me sembo warta sa jumo Quran karam ha omuku bariti alama ala jema alama ala kuma se bismillahir rahmanir rahim aliya bang alhamdulillah rabbil alamin awala fo so pronsa fo bari muslimol be Gambia kata Casamance pe momo nganyo bi aye istaye mabe nyo mona ye na nyefi alkalo ala badi won sate mol yan kumandira ko alkalo dati yel anena manta kadi camera invite parce que kadi lotale ay foni bondal be nan ama alfa tudde ako wolmu hasiloleti hasidiamu iblis ala lasiloleti Solomon dinding ala te manke foni bondal dinti at the first place yafa so akwati dati je bi adati je sama nsa kankula promo be sama it was a liberty face à la liberté mais alon ko jo wili tang ike duku wili tang nga banko tinya alje mira baro ya lone han bolon kono mol man la fala e kala mol le sikana Sénégal tenten e kay ko Allah bar mol bu ka son ka kindi baro jube yin sila futata kala han mo man ta ka ben police la wala taraje yesa ye bulo du nyobul hin ala flako bele bondi say foje la presidente ako foji mo sif ye momen da waro be warari awa ko sojaro ba tebulu e ko mo ba tebulu sawo e ko mo lali wo sojaro wo kandar lale faga la flako bondi faga flako fam bondi ko jakalo wat barola la nyin da siya be ala nyin garu wala kumo be abuda man tara soran ni mange penti cem ni la nyin da wara ba be ke jotere da la nyin te fenti hani makisala nyin da wara sifa be amin ke jotere hani atulba mai wadi mena songola ko tulol bulu ta fa jakalta fa jomota bare maje akoy aji sarra ko ka mem mamande bitula ko kan himu medan ala tan tew celenola abe firfir la fa buday wule tous suma sonka bo tarlaji yo la ko tawo barale fay parat ngene so sa mbaro fa ko fla ko jindi akadum ceo ndam bol ngala we ko nyaka jita kala ja ni bulo du nyobul ni adunda la moto moto fa Republic of the Gambia e ka be boli hey dunia be yalo ne ko baro la député APRC la so to mondial la wol manke fenti fumi ibe yalo ne dunia be yalo ne is no go area for baro ibe yalo ne te amunya so ko support baro agenda kali kamara ko support baro agenda andola foyi o fula ko ndabol wol be mu baro la agenda lati diso awol fe foyi jara albula uteba to mandin sane wala yaje mala candidate on nso fay foyi jaro yaje mala candidate wala keba to mandin sane ar cholo momo ko de fengala ali ko rasila billahi wala taala dumbe sila mba sendale nga 5 nko baro en kajala na be mi tongolo ngala ka janjan ala fania fole siata baronte samuta nyuti alkanal fam batandi Gambia banko titadi economy is already down kumantar tamakan lungolun kolyale be kafula fo mole wili e atebala mukna le master ala buka bijo aka kunune jo ala kan ngani wala jo alkanal fam batandi so kale fam batandi tombon jata anin governor Lamin Sane kunu itala badela na kebala badle former chief Mor Sanya bare mo bare batunore imo fulo kumole baye bung ye Lamin Sane bung e tombon jata bung ala ju meson ile foyi bang foyi bete jube ala nun dam padan ma ba ne bla ba diamula nyinte fenti nyimbuka malu kumuni e selun kundun kunu sedana woni na me borsana imam bade mabe ate mabe no la o bade la ko alman senia anta kenola possible practically impossible anta kenola practically impossible ado bade kenola ate mabenola an nota bakele al nganyor sunkanta bakele ñew keba num dappatero ikay jala naw sunguro ni fadu dumbia nyada be kerabri ko fenko golo bu sotti yo fana jeni to mo bitola gok ale be to mo la rafela ibe ñoo krimba sila ibe jo ibe fusila ñoo kan yin cham keba wala la jobe be jaari kak tay to mo la musombe kan fi buyanko no fay ma moy bang ide go to mo la tay a jemel baroko to mo yakli during the political impasse yeah nakeba do ya mo yakunye ko muru yar fon to monte kay to mo bataro abuka malu le fam abuka malo le tabala abuka malo ni ce ba abuka malo fam abuka malo aman kay fenti ade o man kay fenti nga ce ba jobo man kay fenti waste nothing to him tombo tombo man kay fenti waste nothing nko keba ko hana mandum men kamal katara lori ko chila la kilo fonni keta la kila kan akante mantama maloni sura afutata ay da fe mutara ya so benye kalola bara mala do morotiya anyin ka kila nyin ka wumu muniti akir jamanu mal ko belala mota ta kala fenti wala tombo no sifat akada tara ko ga da don trai wala ke si joka ay konton imajo ako assalamu alaikum imadan amursa cila kan aka mumunati aka tama sero akir jamanu ibe mojala be fankala lo nati wata ma ay man fello wala alaji karamba swali akal barkada sin kanso fe kada ya fode ko kada sansi no akade ikai ko baydala udi kamela kan kamela akan dem baydala tamu min de alabatola min na fada ya adulala kijak aka kamulle kude na lina berole ta londi na fada musode asewuru wura ibai wuru nyamen din teba ko do siobe tembo mento jiyo fele na so fele bulabe kasaba muta ibe mutora ngai boju wala mutonya ha yafo hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal maula basi bobo da akbar bulia awi joshua musoka ako musoka leo hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal maula billahi wala ta'ala ala karamba suane ni o hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil ni ya long billahi wala ta chakanara wala mtoyat kasaba fela mangi fudu musiti ibe musona ngay bo jubele haklo be jamfala ibita ibe haklo be jamfala ibita kudole mirala alika fo ha ko jalba ko mu wodi paga teror nyol ka bolo sangala mar nyol ka ko wodi le usmo UDP la moro le bar sa ko abi MPP la moro chai Gambia len kaja suti wala na ununte kebal ndara selbo le kan ika duanye nde gatara kampari kay ko mune ika duanye le gatara kampari mambure utina yarban ko ceba fala kuma sima dua yarfa wasima wala tina nganyinje je wakeba ba mwela baro ba fala ko ngandi wondi serhanola ninte ba ko abe siarele kuma na kamol kuma ndika mod bendi abe munna kawani la fala modi iba fala la ilaha illa mun sukule kede munne la ilaha illallah isan hanya wirdo muta ala se jarabo la kay koliya la kay ya jiyo fe jangana la masala la dan to man former la ilaha illallah si ke iko ka subole ke ay kama san sana talibor kala mulkam me essence dan wala asibo weta barok je yuni fila moro le ne wosmo wala tiya la nala ako abala lafta ke aje me mako double standard ko hayal si atenkun billahi yaje mele sutarati alat ani yaje me ajara nga ko al setem nga ko nyimano be fanal nyimbe ko ni nolal bul ay nyini nga muna ndega molonel mun ko tank mor kendo wol be pakaw o tifinjo je inche ba mo dunia be baro ya fo ko ata di woni setano baroko islamic republic aw bodile baroko baro alala bungo tey ite ko ite mu dina nyaton ko ni ite mu lonnati o mu woli wolati ite ko kana o man sakele semmentia ite be duwala baro lu ngolum ko lebe la kam bangkok moro te murna ko mo bang sa joko kam mur ko ma manke jotati bare ka sembole yi ite murna ko ma bang ite munelo mo ma melon ite do nan karanati kasamas ite do nan lo soro musa wasila sita ja kawando ke ako ana abla wala ñom présenté sur la Sénégal ko ke na ramwe musa wasila ni Macky Sall be ñola fogala siare samba ka samba Dakar ko fenge jon Antoine Diome interior ministre Macky Sall la interior ministre bolem ala jespikat gamoto so ni kede me anu gamake bisilma nga to nyala musa wasila e bandi dimbe mu fengila musa wasila be ko ni babe kalaje ngaje anim baro fa anim baro kenasa baro setan mano dial anitulo afudale jan siditi jan duanyo le amuta kay masibu se moro nin kala kay moro nin kala jakala warol fona di fo yala bang arkam mole manale ya jeme ni ko ba mala be do yalla sudan molle be jutudela bi atul man jar fenal yar se jar la fenala atul te jar la fogol la ko Allah ko ta nyaaro muk fok sen kom almin toñila han ala yal tan ya abe mole kal mo woni yole ya be ko kawne wodi am welele wole woliyat wonde woliyat woliyo basi bo kenan ko dina nyaatu kole ka bora ba wala ka dili ko badu kuka ya be ko wole moriyat akaw da gondela imam radib chornaka assalamu alaikum ya imam assalamu alaikum jariye fay jaje fay ina wala ndengo ke ba juwe ni aje teledo ani mo la min tule haglo ga jamba ngam mire ni mo sifane ñun be sila no nyaade li ila dimbali ni jube yalla harama diw mo le kuma kan ya kanta wala nente hali miliyaro le samala ndenen de joyna barona ma ko ndaro sal yalla fa ko de nga ala sallay dani wala ala ben kan den law mon solala disla adi ma fana lamin musgo rek lamin swan ako muso do ko bare ñun ngamene mo mbadi ade bolay mo la banko kam ako muso ko ila fe ni kema ha do ko do be mbul fo man yo ngawta nga do ko fo la mi swan muso la bul ala muso la man yo dal dala muso la o man yo dal la o do ko waga ani wela muso ko karam ako ye ako tamul fang choya bay kay ma si bokk nga wala fitul wala ci muso ci mori ko ha mbe maniyole kala mbe do ko kala afani alam alqur'ano ni maniyoti tano abe fania escale folo ka futa man stala o subhanallah abe wuliya yana bayile morole yalla ma moriyalo moriya ila fele moriya e mala de kara tonya kan kana mo fasa fani akan akala te de mal wana mole haklu moro nin kala takalo wasa ani ide ami fabure so-called Minister of Agriculture. Ite Ami Faburi. Iko ha mol kana karto fai candidate la candidate for Ami Kwali. Who are you after all? It's too much. Maybe Tolo Funi, whatever be Mula. Only I don't know. Banco Benjamin Cairo Mantara Bangkoka. You are Carlo Palabaro. It a fire on Baro Mumuka Baroso, Mutela Fla. Do not be only Narco Albert Tajirial Calabitas, Como Solo Lenatla. Yala La Baroman Kessia, Molman La Fala. People are seeing it's a global team. Dunia is on satellites. Molmeba Jubekan. So if it no Vilta. Atina danal abedanal kumol kan fasi mol man la fala e ite ko elata ka blabe gagne o be keno nyani fania kan ani momon yana reading resource la ay tara sir a reach nya kilo flanja boga resource ko read wala nyam presidential election mol be election o conduct la kabri 1972 fobi me ya mano sula ya mari ne baro changes course. Alafrika Gambia take a case legal it will not work. Alan in Tony Ireland. Pasi dunia muhagul towards. Ngo Gambia billahi wala be two bilade. Fali bili ale react. Ale ya jame bolose. Ale menke billahi albe lola la aliafo niamo nta fola niamo kari duno landa kunda manguri oto duno mandetin mana detina wura ko liale kana everyday commodity store be higher bankole economic is collapsed wala nga fene Senegal ni mo bukateria e man kasara parce they are bunch of liars. They can allege and they can lie. And Allah won't be kunkan. I'll be kunkan. It will not work. But all of the Yako Kolo member Gambia, Han Sisor, Han total Baloko Kolo Lekana, Okolo Munanaman. Allo Tajang, Lungolu, Yajame, Lungoli, Saka Yajama Chibaro, Chibar Shada, Bim Forke, Fulol, many along Kafaniafo, Sam Itigi. Sai kuma ibaro ibe dibolo kono sai moli alonko e ka wulia men fo alkarro fay baroy sai natale sai be gambele sai la jala be gam atole sai alnatale sai alfon la jala arabara bay de go report at the police station very sad moro nte manjam fale lo Nteningo kumo fo ya kanta ila kuma kongo ya kanta wala foroti foriamu kangoleti they allow to lie many alonko they from nowhere President Jammeh Sambato standard do you want him in Kanyang ndumbe sila ba fola sama musama sorti fonga fi sasa isasa ta nyang ku fulalen lakra wala kinda he kare sasa lule bara milta atala ya mfama almaji anabila yu baba sasa me ama wonene manda fe ma ko musu tanning killing musol be bota ko fatu na ramatullah drone tubabu wana ramatullah to ha mashallah momo ya suto musoti jama be mafo be musabar lale di bara 90% mo kendo la na ramatullah yaba muso mol se hakilo to bak mo se hakilo to bak wannan duniya to yin turo man betia sabaro nyon tara lumbe sila afola baytla mete ñu folal na data ma sala sam be ngatele jama be hola ha badlam no badlam tombon agents kan tombon be toñale kan sa kuma sa wulo ni la wuli abe bare wulo ko kumbo me alon ko domando mar men sa la kuma da ko kumbo sai be alon ko be la so nyaare ka mbali njola de me da so ni ko tombo Israel e simila tombo no di administration modal ni tombo no di compte modal ni tombo no FT modal ni ne jube ya mira ko fo binan MP kamoje anin ka long e manke keliti I never stand in a political platform kadiam you left no I do you never been jala because ngadiam no I know how to talk and I know the tonya we don't want to follow but the time on in fit there kurumol bi da fule fola they will allege me something me alon ka man so wana ngam pa ko ni o do yango ko li ñandi muli jari ko tuno aga tamane bagala sa do suude diwa ko baro kañe la faga kaño dong fa buda be katara la ko kamala president Elizabeth Djibouti ba fala muli ko oh tin tombon jata yankuba kole Ousmane Rambo Jata no alama alatu no dunia mukawando rek yankuba fambe si abela la dam fama sore rente ni alam mansar ala manki fulati kilinem aka mbuka bijo ko kunne jo men ku kendo men ke kuna be jola ye ku jo men ke kuna be jola rabbi lungo le be lungo ko na bile imanjari fen in the society imanjari fen for tombon kamo ani momo sabale kanyo jabe doko ye ko tombo fu sabele banda gata mital che bata sabala baka kati paga foye ko yipare ali mo sabal be ñoo jabe kay ma si bobo ta halakita ngati nyata lakati sala lakira be bantal ja yece ba koro ja dundal dum duwa lun kono jiko tay lakira ko moro nin kala alay karambas hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil wa ni'mal mawla lagwar esan alma ala tinyar afonin ce ba shi alaman ne su ana nyatele alala ay Gambia bula akanyin jambaro men ke Gambia lun kila bita kala fop anyala le iba butela iba la moto janila iba ngaybe na fo mo be ya jangay bita ay fata Gambia la na dugol so ya fa fata Gambia la ay siya ya ke fo warandi manke menti te keno le manke fenti imanke fenti ya te keno fenti Gambia al fata mo la bangola ila moriya siya ibina mula bangotti yalla mu be selte fula ga woyte mula no moddi mo de amna la kula han ga bi daga la e kadwa mo me han ga bi mo mala fa baro de fin la fo mo le bori aka ya bulanom baro de fin la fo mo le ta ya nganya la ko e tajala abe tambile be kalon ko man sala be tambo ide fo yala bang en kala ite kan duwala e malon yeta salata la annabi cema saba tan saba anin saba yela ko ci 330 yela ko ci la wala kala ibe jala be ba wala na ko ke nke ba man sala alaja ko kullu ya ko musa ta man sero han ga bi da man paside be do yakon ide sitanu nya mu na so be safen e kala ka ji mo la buji tan ko ne be mo le min dila la Gambia jang abe fanya pour mo sala fi usen la bon pour mo le mo fanya bon usen la wo mo ke bulu kawan lo ba ide la jiko sanse la bon nin ke ba han ka bi tamam pasite man sila alanya e fala la mo la bangola bang halo mani ise fan kanyang ite ban kanya la bang te fere la mo la bang ko la bang lungolung e ko fanke fere wati ni wati ko moro fere be de fonyo la bang kayra mon tara Gambia kan han kabi banko be halakkan problème be nakan lungolung problème be Gambia alila mo nyindol
assalamu alaikum dairatu ansarudin fastere coy te bu dama fatte ñu leen di ziaré ñin ñepp leen dokkel leen wacce seen waccu way di ñaan yalla kenn ku ci nek fu tollu rek yeen ko fi defal tawfiq defal jam yalla sam ko ci barke baay sant yalla wa prestamol bobu nga gis ngeen gis mo dugal dembu dama fatte wala dugal audio way dafa nek ci biir marché dafa nek ci biir dëkk bi jóge ko ci dëkk boobu ñu naan Israël di dëkk yëfu boobu nga xam ne prestamol bi dañ ci def virus maanaam sumu lañ ci def tooke lañ ci def képp ku ko jëfandikoo rek juróomi fan lañ la may nga génn àdduna juróomi fan lañ la may nga génn àdduna te mu ngi si suufi Gambia fu mu nekk nii kon képp kuy jënd prestamol na nga xool bu baax prestamol bi ngay jënd ñu fa def soo koy jënd di nga gis ñu ngi def bii 500 moom lañ def ci kaw pour nga bàyyi ko xel bala nga koy jënd di ko jëfandikoo ba bala nga koy jënd di ko yóbbu sa njaboot dafa am ñoo xam ne dañ miin ci romb prestamol jënd ko lu leen métti ñu ne prestamol waaye prestamol bi moom mu ngi ci biir marché bi te dafa amee virus bu garaaw la amee képp ku ko naan nag juróomi fan rek da ngay génn àdduna ci lim gën a gaawee te anam ko lu doy waar lay génnee àdduna kon yéen ñu si yàlla musal ci bépp julit lii nag amaanatul am li dirasatil islami fii Gambia ñoom ñoo ko génnee waaw wane ko mu nekk xibaar boo xam ne xibaar bu wér la pour ñëpp nañ ci bàyyi set
sombenga mwele baro la masakunda angale amwele ali amwele bang ni moma si mwele de very sad abala fa warta amwe ba ita mwele lok mitindula ta nyon ko diamana na o batra minister health ha ya sana jararo betale ya jama mo isebatu moye jay bay kane fanjay furo sa fanjay no nyimbe mu torolti nyim ale nyim banko bedu nyim problème kono ale miskinol tora nyim batara dol fana be bro post kono dingol baro mu ne kasal gan dina baro mo fani mo nyimo posteno ale la moñ.
Back in the 1970s, there was a massive oil crisis, the effects of which were felt from Japan to the United States. U.S. consumers were having to pay up to $4 a gallon, which at that point of time was unheard of. So the United States got into an agreement with Saudi Arabia, which is the world's largest producer of oil, that any sale of oil will be settled in dollars. No matter which country bought oil, whether it was America or China or India or Japan, they would all pay in dollars. This arrangement came to be called the petrodollars. Put simply, the petrodollar system is an exchange of oil for US dollars between countries that buy oil and those who produce it. For the last 50 years, this petrodollar system has been unchallenged. Until now, when Vladimir Putin decided to teach Ukraine a lesson. Putin knew that the invasion of Ukraine would be inevitably met with US and other Western countries throwing it out of the international banking system. That Russia and Russian companies will not be able to use the SWIFT mode of banking transactions. So most Russian companies and the Russian economy as a consequence suffer because of it. But how does Russia respond to this? By shutting off oil and gas to Europe, and remember, Europe needs 40% of its oil and gas from Russia. Russia also asks for transactions to be settled either in ruble or gold or any non-dollar asset. Now this, as expected, has caused massive price as well as supply disruptions to the Western markets. It is also a threat to the monetary system that's been in place for the last 50 plus years. On Crux Decode this week, how Vladimir Putin's mission in Ukraine puts an end to the petrodollar. For years now, Russia and China have looked to ways to remonetize gold as well as be able to exit from SWIFT. They feel this just simply enables the dollar and in turn America, which is the producer of the dollar, to get more and more stronger. But here's the challenge for Russia. How do you exit from the system of petrodollars without the West calling it an act of war? Now, this invasion in Ukraine has just accomplished that, and the West gave it to Putin on a platter. Now that Russia is mostly out of the SWIFT system, it is free to trade its oil with whoever is the highest bidder, and that too in a currency of its choosing. Russia can now say, well, we're going to turn our oil pipelines back on, but not for dollars, instead for rubles. Russia then declares that Europe or anybody who wants Russian oil, and remember, Russia is the third largest producer of oil and gas in the world, they must pay in ruble or any ruble-backed payment system. Similarly, it allows Russia to have ruble and yuan or ruble and rupee agreements without having to convert to dollars. Now, this leverage as the third biggest oil producer has caused immediate price shocks to the Western world. At the beginning of this year, oil was trading at just $75 a barrel. Today, it's gone up to $140 a barrel, doubling within just 3 months. But it's not just Russia or China. Today, even Saudi Arabia and the UAE are openly talking about selling their oil and settling in local currencies. Both Russia and Iran, for example, are offering countries like India and China oil at hugely discounted prices. And guess what? These countries are lapping it up. As the second and third biggest consumers of oil, China and India are licking their fingers at the prospect of buying oil at 25 to 30% discounts. And geopolitics is also keeping pace. This past week, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad visited the UAE and met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed. This was the first visit by Assad to an Arab country since the civil war in his country began more than 10 years ago. One of Assad's biggest backers has been Vladimir Putin. Russia has been helping Assad's regime with airstrikes, which are critical in fighting the rebels in Syria. And now, Bashar al-Assad is returning the favor by pleading on Putin's behalf to fellow Arab countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia. Now, these two countries, UAE and Saudi Arabia, have also given the cold shoulder to America, who happens to be their biggest ally for the last 50 years. Both UAE and Saudi Arabia have refused to raise oil output, and it was not lost on Washington that both the leaders of Saudi Arabia and UAE avoided taking phone calls from US President Joe Biden. The UAE even abstained in the United Nations vote on Ukraine. Now, this threat to the petrodollar is no different from the time of Charles de Gaulle or Muammar Gaddafi or even Saddam Hussein, but on a much larger scale. America cannot hope to remove Vladimir Putin as easily as they did with these previous leaders who challenged the petrodollar system. Now, what are the consequences of the United States and the European Union kicking Russia off the SWIFT banking transaction system? Will it hurt the Russian economy? Well, certainly in the immediate term it will. But removing Russia from SWIFT could be exactly what Russia and China desire. And here's why. The SPFS, or the System for Transfer of Financial Messages, is a Russian equivalent of SWIFT. It was being developed by the Central Bank of Russia. The system has been in development since 2014 after the US government threatened to disconnect Russia from SWIFT. There are now plans to integrate the SPFS network with the China-based CIPS network, which is the cross-border interbank payment system. Now, can you imagine the effect of that? If Russia is removed from SWIFT, the blow to the US economy, and more so to the economy of Europe, would be enormous. The vast majority of SWIFT transactions are settled in US dollars, and that simply helps solidify the dollar as the global reserve currency. This gives the United States tremendous influence over the world economy, and therein lies the real power. If Russia and China come up with an alternative system to compete with SWIFT, that will be a competing currency system, and it will further weaken the US dollar. Not to mention, Russia is the second largest exporter of energy, and China is the largest manufactured goods exporter. They could also easily co-opt existing partners like the African countries and countries in Latin America, putting Europe and the United States on the back foot. Oil is the most traded commodity in the world, and it is settled in US dollars. For the last 50 years, this petrodollar system has seen the rise of powerful Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. But now, if the world's largest exporter of oil, Russia, and the world's largest importer, China, come together, they don't need to settle in dollars, and this may just be the end of these multi-billion-dollar petro-funded fiefdoms.
Baraka, Vladimir Putin, alame simala. Londo mu hikima kin sonte Putin ma. Nkwari duaye. No, this man is good. Daila. Afera be American or kulula, abe dunia itendilela. Pedro dollar. Ilahi. Ñun kala fi momo ye mude ye not baranga fone Gambia. Momo abulo dunje charam. Alay Samson ila ñu Samson obe bandale wala na momo ko tuba mala on mejel ali ago momo iya ka fole je tiwtiw allo ila banko e wala important kana ya karmola afele UDP ko dala ni ko Sénégalais les terre marti alay ha barbi japale ka fo e boral gorol alala mo nyindo ko na kamefo.
After 50 years of brutally invading Afghanistan and completely decimating its population, who are already very impoverished and very poor, last week or 2 weeks ago, our government unilaterally announces that they're going to confiscate $7 billion of Afghani wealth found in banks from the people of Afghanistan just because they have the power to do so. Then you have the arrogance and you have the gall to proclaim us as being the backward. You never gave them a chance. You are the ones who invaded and bombed, and then when the civil war happens and refugees are created, you have the audacity to blame the religion. We have to point out these double standards, and we need to educate ourselves and then them of this reality. And it's not just that. Let's be brutally honest here. Look at how those Ukrainians who are standing up and fighting Russian oppression are being portrayed. Look at how those people are being portrayed as freedom fighters. Look at the valorization of the underground resistant movement. SubhanAllah, CNN on its front page had an in-depth story of the life and bravery of a Ukrainian soldier who blew himself up to prevent Russians from crossing a particular bridge. He is viewed as a martyr for a noble cause. In any other circumstance, this would have been a suicide bomber who is a religious fanatic. But all of a sudden, the same incident and the same reality is portrayed in a different manner. BBC on its front page, and I could not believe this, I saw this with my own eyes, was reporting with glee, with happiness, that British citizens are coming to the Ukrainian embassy wanting to fight and wanting to volunteer. And the interviewer says, "Are you Ukrainian?" "No, I'm not Ukrainian." "Why are you going?" "I want to fight for justice." Subhanallah. So when it is Russia that is invading, you want your own citizens to go and defend. But when it is a Western power, then when your citizens do this, then you go and you jail them and you call them terrorists. We have to be fair here. We have to be consistent in what we say is freedom and what we say is justice. Just because the invaders happen to be us, all of a sudden everything changes? No, we have to, with wisdom, because again, this is a very sensitive topic, and I have to put this disclaimer. Throughout those years of whatever was happening in the Middle East, I was never an advocate of those religious movements, but at the same time, I never said that those types of people in those lands are doing anything wrong. I never said this. And today I'm saying the same thing. When a foreign country comes and invades you, what do you expect the locals to do? What do you expect? So if you can understand Ukrainians are standing up against Russia, then why can we not understand when a Western power invades, those locals will also stand up? Why is there two different methods of judging? This is the double standards and hypocrisy that we need to point out, brothers and sisters. One wonders, really, when people make such statements and write such stories, are they not even aware of the blatant double standards, of the sheer hypocrisy of these claims? And that's why we Muslims have to be the voice of conscience. We have to be the educational barometer of society around us. Our media, our politicians, they ignore our own country's role in the creation of problems in our own lands. They concentrate only on the effects of the problems they created. And instead of taking ownership and responsibility, even if partially, they simplistically and with racism blame the religion and the skin color. Oh, it's their faith that does this. Oh, those are Africans or Middle Eastern or Arabs people. And they dehumanize the plight of everybody who is suffering under their role, while they valorize the plight of those who are suffering under Russia. The Ukrainians are fighting against those who invaded them. They are freedom fighters. When the Palestinians stand up and fight against oppression for 70 years, they become the aggressors. They become the violent people. What is going on? This is the perfect time, brothers and sisters, the perfect time for every one of you to become a small ambassador amongst your circle of family and friends, amongst your colleagues, with wisdom. I keep on saying, because it's a very sensitive topic. We are not justifying terrorism. But who gets to define terrorism? And why is one act considered terrorism, not the other? These are the questions we're asking. These are the questions we want the broader society to begin think about. Just because Russia, that is a rival of America, invades, all of a sudden, anybody who opposes them, we paint them in a certain way. When we do the same actions, anybody who opposes our land, we treat in a different manner. And I keep on telling us, if we're not going to point out the double standards now, when are we going to do this? That is why my motivation to give this khutbah. This is the perfect opportunity for us to be, as I said, ambassadors of wisdom. Actual, what Allah says in the Quran, كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ. Speak with justice and truth, even if it is against yourselves. We are living in these lands, and we understand these lands have a lot of good, but these lands have also done some evil overseas. And it is our job, we appreciate the good, but we point that evil out. And that is my fifth and final point. Brothers and sisters, much more can be said, and there are many benefits and wisdoms to extract, but time is always limited. And inshallah,
yo ndenga mwela sai ave kunkan akamembo tonyale imaje angalelo kontanta ukraineno tada ko bita chele okele la bankoy wol e ko wol mo freedom fighters lati bonim palestine wol be kelola ila bankoy israel ka tema ko wol mo aggressionolti wol ke aggressele ndol nyanda ka kuni ngalong ñun be munafiko lati to wol munafiko lati bi imaje basa ala sar fangu jube ñinem foriati putin lotaye kabri ñin ko switch problème o natila nan a wilta kala ka ñunu campagne americano ka mol forcé ha ibela fenko wa filan to la dollar la pour que c'est la gagner so ko français ka men ke CFA la CFA jube 98% France ka wala Sénégal 2% ini la ñin diam sia be ikoy kuningal ali bale 98% français ka wala 2% ka wala di Sénégal ini la ñin diam sia be koy tul kunintale mole mo sa fo fa ite kuningal mole ñanda ka ite kuningal yalon diam sia ni kunin mo ngekili wala ma je basa ala sa finta akara yunale arab emirates kada ke konton ke putin la ko campagne putin ko barka da ñun imagine système mo men finti SPFC France franco fana China fana yelo CIPS or fana yo introduce yenyu sud transfanyim bon America la njumadi ki banko me alon ka nyim banko be tar dunia ko nyim banko le baro sanji wili kilin ni fen ni America na da sanji temelulu ani fa ya wala ana mulke mu no sere kam le ko Senegal is created out of ground from Mauritania Senegal e Casamance taraje Senegal e Gambie taraje ni ba tarol kala fo de kal dajel ba tarol men ma Gambia lo Gambia is part in 10th century o mu bire Gambia America saban bare ka tara sire han Senegal fan e Senegal ma Casamance ma histoire o ye banko men taraje o banko le kala balu wala mtonya modo sino la be nya kulo fete na makisala na to kuni dala ngona ya be fuluri abe kamfari camera ka tet samule o dilo bantale basa ala sa jube problem atala United Arab Emirates to campaign for Putin abotaje ajube Arab bankol kunindi kaytandi lela bare maje Joe Biden abe Saudi authority commande wala son telephone tala wala ala telephone ido United Arab Emirates wol men ko han ni problem ko adi United Nation wol ma America support ali ni European Union fan be talala because European Union ba jela ko America ke to usile wala ala America man kati so e ka mole use ko japal ko Senegal fana man kai hani e ka mole collect e ka banko kan ka wuli afo wana ite chelo gagner la plateau muk e ko ya jame mole fa bari tol 1998 di fango sato ni pour la station habitas Sindon kada alian ibatal je o sato yo le bombarder Sénégal mintero Abdou Diouf la tilo 1998 ka sato mo befa bari yesi Sénégal was a democracy Sénégal non batara mazakuna be kering Africa ko Kongoro se foriano Kongoro se alabatu no fa aitima mona be Sénégal banko wana manke court bare mol faje bare wote fola in 2006 abla wala yusa passen ñol dana ka helicopter dinane français kam ka civilanol fa fola ba on salib sajori e altede la kera ke fa ko ka français muta Sénégal français sojaro ke muta aspris na fo in 2006 but yes they are champion in democracy dia mole si ade wele quand même be bo be wulia wa wala jongolem Sénégalais masakunda ni alondi chila be France le tala wala la alat baro kilo wala ni if you go to the African magazine bajala European friend African enemy go to Cote d'Ivoire the same thing wala be rati wana foy ko tenkon wala nga fo ne sinyo ya hako mampekia yale ko ina ra chelola bari bi fela la moli fa ba ka sa da vidroi ye moli fa ba ka ala be feyila le rebelo man ka swalti sorati ala nin toñindir la den ko hakko buka mutu bare ile mo be di tok e man son ka kumay e ko to mu jambaro to Senegal ni Gambia dama selo 24 hours ado kana jubere ini ni rebelo do rebel mo 7 de wol position da kuke utole ke la ni groupe be bro mo la ne plateau ke sweep nyinka ala nin toñindir la den hakko buka mutu wala tata terola dawla ita ganyala billahi wal kitab imam fata ka fania fo ke fandundi wani kono be ke jo busi ka toni ro ke wani bangola ite je karo jala mu ngoy lakati tale ara imam ko jafo dala Sénégalais wolu mo mol melo han ko fo kono mo se bareki idiots Gambian security men are silence of it sokol author ka ko morsi ala karto fay ala mona na mol man ta ka bendu ni ala me ko kello rek momi alon ka mala famille fa regle na ala musor ka tala sire man tara diari o se mol ka funino me mala dimbal fam kam iman keno kinenti ajuma kum Omar la mamman bala fa din way fan o se bala fa mole na manke garo wala kumo tika kumo fon sumo sata tenin wolen toya faka foko atol dibitel ngal duku wili tan o dibitel nyatal tol musidin senewol to nyanda ka lo ko ka campagne dona ka to fala tel $10,000 very cheap agam do ko taga muso na ma so rama men do hani ko fala sinasiala dan ka kin platos wala wot anu ko le sen MP e bambal fan ay moto di le jang anata ka lo adama ni momo ko city yeyi la so am bi biya ba fala pas sata very cheap bi ma jama ko ate 10,000 ako jako sa musafele wala msedo amalon fa quand même for the big crime immoral very incompetent government amalon ay ko men I men sa fon la amalon I men for the amalon was a big crime worldwide amalon fon aka molin ayin diamu be man ka saudi awel tajang bar nga fon ko ay men ka ba be sala awel tajang ko ate adigo di setano ko ani mom e kusita ba fala tombo nyaro mo jar fenna la say o mo jar fen ay fala kan o che bante fenti no tombo o mo hakade wonti nyama hakade o wolen tombonti hakade o wolen tombonti no nyama hakade o wolen tombonti adila mo nyindol
parce que mon mala fi UDP man sa yaaj adama ro jole di député wala député on ngey dukul das si wuli tan Allahu akbar iko da si wuli jël das si wuli tan adama baro ala la kulu man sa
baro deja adama muda kasiti masibolati masi baba mo albalaliti hakwa faka fo ate dibtel dugo dal siwilita mo albalaliti masi baba faka ate amma mutakasilati woman ka bulu tanati ay men foten amalo wo kan mo albalaze fa kalo ka fa ndengo duku wirita abala fa warta ba billahi wala bala fa warta bake man sake ka fo ha nden ngi dukule wili tan ni ako bala fa warta very very sad amalo fan sembo warta malo sembo warta bake billahi wala tala mo selo nya tilin wala ka fu duniya be tema duniya be kamoy amanke maloti fan alila mo ndola Aji Sarr Macky Sall la ko ani
billahi wallahi tallahi fi la waxe def ci sama dëkk bay la samay dëkk fokk talibé la fii mooy kër yoro dëkk alaaji moom seen su fekkee da man Aji Sarr nettalewu ne ma lii mu nekk ay fen la yàlla bu ma àgg kaw di ngeen dégg audio yi te dinaa ko génne ragaluma dee kenn mënu ma rey kenn mënu su fekkee xaalis nga bëgg kii xaalis moo tax muy wax bëggatul barke Cheikh Ibrahima Niass bën ki démb yàggul dara hôtel Méridien lañ ma tegal 100 millions du ma tudd ñooñu 100 millions lañ ma tegal soxla moo ko ndax man du ma doomu sëriñ boo xam ne ba ma juddoo ba léegi musuma laa jaati maa koy wax ci kaw te sama vidéo yëpp chaque jour moom musuma tukki fenn laay tukki mooy Nigéria gàmm la 4 jours 4 jours la.
Sambenga mwele Senegal la wulo Macky Sall ni moro le minti akate buka tama nambe tama la katana jirele tilin nani ay sena ako atatale ako nyatra ko abe men fokan nyatra fanialem haji salma sata bi tilo kanadam ako aji sar dale afa ko e kanyin kuma men be tumal sonkala be fania toñate akay toñante ka tumal le ako afta kabilate botaje ya commande Meridian Hotel Meridian danga jelo ne ngalla jele Dakar abe hotel dantet abe cité fenko fan ni tam da hotel dantet rek ibitaji albe almadile ngajelo ne baba la je kak ako ya e kolon landa masakunda moli kay ko million cheme fele yede yem fasa sonko mol parade sonko balale afo makiye sonko tengundi ngombiro me alon ya jambula lele luoto ni ko be mala be tulale afo ko aji sar la ko ya tuje ila kairo mu walati mar aji sar la ko abre fania to nya kirinti sonko biya be tembo mendo Senegalais lafta la bak na ma fata sonko la ko la budal be finti la banta le beti a tinyaro men ga mala fi sonko siano adila mo nyindo
li ma leen wax rek boko waxee rek tegginewu mais tellement que gis nga ñun ñoo war a jël suñuy matuwaay gis nga Ousmane Sonko ay affaire viol yooyu lañ war a jël teg ko na le Ousmane Sonko ku ko laal dañuy war a toj sa lu fanday waaw parce que xamalu tax Ousmane Sonko nekk na impôt domaine 15 ans mosuñu koo dégg ci fukki dërëm ñu ngi ko mën a toppee ñëw créer seen manipulation affaire de viol pour jéem a accuser nit ki ñun ñu ñàkk fayda war a bàyyi Ousmane Sonko te mu nekk suñuy bëgg-bëgg fii ku la nekkal ci naaj bi nga nekkal ko ci kër bi loolu mooy problème bi Ousmane Sonko lim ñu jaral mooy daf ñoo nekkal ci naaj bi ñu nekkal ko ci kër gi lu mu leen jaral nañu ko ci aussi ñu aussi sa jopp nday muy Macky Sall ak juge ak police ak gendarmerie kuñ ci ñàpp sa lëfal nday laal ci Ousmane Sonko ku la naxa katt ndaye man maa ko wax Ousmane Sonko ku ko ci laal sa jar na nday ku la naxa katt ndayem Sénégal tàkk ba jeex tàkk waaw parce que lii yabaate la lii ku ko supporter rek barki yàlla doo nitu dëgg ku nekk ci impôt demoon ak politique ak li nga xamante mooy impôt demee nga mën faa nekk ba jóge fa mënuñu laa toppee dara dërëm mënuñu la ko toppee dem ba moment yi bëgg a ñëw di ñu ak bousculer mooy ni ñun xanaa ñun dañoo bëgg ñu dee ci toroxtaange li ñuy dund nii barki yàlla est-ce que sax safara am na lii doomu toj cott ndayam bëgguñu ko teg lu ñu yàlla tegul doomu xaraam yi bëgguñu ko teg
sa alia mwele baro go yale ko for my boss go ya jame mo buka sa kumole kaka alkana kumo sosele mo buka sa kumole kaka ila boss bula be wulela la tiu nincho baranga fu wole yan dunya mu korosirolati mo be buka mano kenu jang karin wada a jeleta ake Babkar Sala a jeleta aka ba kela sonko e pare aka ye sonko jambule malon ay menke nya ka sila fay ko sonko kay ay tenko ali nya kasi Gambia no la wili ale mamang ñim bataro manke fengo fenti fo fania fo lungolo marchandise obe kafula tous ibe ñim campagne abe wulia ali momor njaay mo fana be yotu kalne ila dimba la sela te tenku mbedan na le jang sama nte di amnola mbedan na le jang nal badi malen baytula al ma'ruf sa jamaat babil masjid assalam